Why do you do what you do?
Whoa. Okay. That
Yeah.
got deep.
Yeah,
Facts.
I just went right for it.
Let's just
Go to the jugular.
type, submersible. Okay. Why do I do what I do?
Yeah.
That's a layered question. It's a layered question.
Let me phrase it this way.
Yeah,
maybe.
please. Yeah.
How about why do you help or try to help people? Let's say, and even when you may know that you're not going to be able to. How you doing, David?
I am exhausted.
Exhausted?
Yeah. We're recording this on a Sunday, and
Yeah.
I played soccer today with my 15-year-old brother-in-law.
Nice.
And I was not prepared for the damage that my body would take. I'm so sore. I thought, my cardio is so off, man. My body feels like 20 pounds heavier.
Man. So why did you do that? Why did you put your body through all of that torture?
Oh, because I loved it. It was so fun.
Because you loved it.
Yeah,
because it was
Joey
fun.
Soccer. We played in the backyard
Nice.
of our house, and of course, my brother-in-law played soccer with him since he was like 6, 7. He's like 15 now.
Wow.
So it's like a kind of a way we
Ritual.
bond. Yeah, it's a ritual that him and I bond over. I won him over with soccer, so
Good.
he plays soccer. Yeah.
So it has a lot of purpose there.
Yeah, there's a lot there too. Yeah, so it's fun. It's a fun time.
Okay.
And now I can actually he's probably listening to this. I don't know. I can actually put effort and still lose.
Okay. Nice. Okay. Yeah.
But when you play a 6-year-old, you're like,
yeah.
let's go. Right. Trying to keep it, 50-50. How about you? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm not as tired as I was earlier in the week. I'm sure this coming week I will be tired at the end of the week, but
okay.
Yeah.
It's good.
But it's good. So
yeah. Whenever someone with 4 kids says they're not as tired, that's like a huge win.
Yes. Resounding yes.
4 kids 6 and under.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's 100% true.
So I'm happy for you.
I'm happy for me too right now. Actually, I feel pretty good about it. I'm curious though. Why? So I'm gonna quickly take this to a little bit of a different zone, and I've had some thoughts about this, and I've had some questions presented to me, and I'm curious. I wanted to ask you some of these things. Why do you do what you do?
Whoa. Okay. That
Yeah.
got deep.
Yeah.
Facts.
I just went right for it.
Let's just
go to the jugular.
Tight, submersible. Okay. Why do I do what I do?
Yeah.
That's a layered question.
Mhm.
It's a layered question.
Let me phrase it this way.
Yeah,
maybe.
please. Yeah.
How about why do you help or try to help people? Let's say, and even when you may know that you're not going to be able to.
Even when I know I'm not going to be able to?
Yeah. Or if you sense
there's
that
sometimes that it won't work.
Yeah, that it's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
Sometimes
why?
it doesn't.
Yeah, because one question that was phrased to me, it's what's the goal of therapy? Why should people go to therapy? Right? What's the purpose of that? And I'm curious from your perspective, like for you, what's the purpose for you? Why do you want to try to help someone even when you know it may not work?
Yeah, it's whenever I go into the therapy room, I never know if it's going to work or not. So I want to start by saying that me not knowing whether it's going to work or not is somewhat irrelevant in the sense that it's still worth it to me.
And why? Why is that? Yeah.
Oh man, I just at a very high level, I enjoy talking to people, but more so I enjoy listening to them. So that's like my selfish reason. But I wouldn't have to be a therapist for that. But therapy allows me to do that, right?
Yeah.
I think when you go into the therapy room, you realize that a lot of people have not been listened to in the ways that they are listened to in therapy. They've not been heard. They've not been able to share something, especially things that are maybe super heavy and existential to their lives. They've not been able to find a way to express that or bring it out. And, by asking questions in certain ways and digging here and digging there, there's deep parts of people that come out in therapy. And as the therapist, when I can, because of my training, receive that, but also it's not for me to receive it, to again deflect it back to them in a way that they can look at themselves and confront themselves in a way they haven't before. And as a result, right? As a result, they can then make the decisions they need to make to pursue and live a more meaningful life, a more fulfilled life, a more fulfilled relationships in the context of couples, because I work a lot with couples.
Yeah.
And that's huge because people struggling out there, man. People struggling. They want to live life better, but they don't know how.
And is it the goal for you that they wouldn't struggle?
No. So I see struggle in two ways. And I take this imagery from the Bible, actually. So there's thorns. There's the pain. There's pain comes in two forms. And if you look at it from like a gardening perspective, there's weeds and thorns, and then there's like pruning. Weeds and thorns is like meaningless pain. And I feel like a lot of people are going through meaningless pain and meaningless struggle.
You mean meaningless pain on the part of the gardener? Or
on the part of the plant.
Okay.
So
really?
Imagine
so weeds and
plants.
thorns would be meaningless pain on the part of the plant.
Yeah, I'll go with the gardener, I guess.
I could see so I could see if I was the plant, if I was the rose bush.
Yeah.
My thorns may not affect me at all.
That's true. Actually. Right. Yeah.
But I have to recognize that they impact others.
They definitely do. Yeah.
Now the weeds may needlessly impact me.
Right.
Because that's where I'm growing.
Yes.
And they may also hurt when they're pulled if they're tied to my roots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or if you're a plant that grows amongst weeds and thorns, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Then your growth is hindered. And it's like this, it's the struggle that doesn't produce or provide meaning. Versus pruning, which is the process of, cutting and shaping. I'm not a gardener, but it's a process of pain that allows you to produce more fruit and allows you to grow.
So
that's meaningful pain.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, again, like in therapy, we never promise that our goal is to remove pain or remove struggle. It is to help people become more resilient.
So this is curious for me because I think some modes of therapy focus on eliminating human suffering.
Are you serious?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I haven't thought about that, but that's
right. The goal would be to eliminate suffering wherever and whenever possible.
Okay. So can you give some examples?
Well, so if we think, if someone is hurting and in pain, I think when I think about this word, what do the kids say these days? They cringe. But the word empath, right? Like The empath in people wants to help alleviate human suffering. They see somebody in pain. They want to help them not suffer anymore, not be in pain, not experience what it is they're experiencing. And I think on the one side of that, we could look at that and say, well, yeah, sure. Isn't that okay? Isn't that fine?
Right. Yeah, I totally empathize.
Right?
Empathize with that.
However, another question would be, well, is that actually meaningful? Or is some part of suffering necessary? Does this person actually need to go through what they're going through now? And does it look the same to support them as they're going through it as it does to try to take it away? So I'm curious, do you try to take away the pain to remove it?
I don't. Maybe at times I feel like I want to, because I'm naturally more of a empath. Right? Like, oh, pain. I don't like to see people in pain, right? But again, I try to discern between the meaningless versus the this is needless suffering, versus, for example, a good example of meaningful suffering is grief. And I think in the Western world, especially, we're very bad at grief. We know how to do grief. I heard somebody say the other day that back in the day, like the living room in houses, it was not referred to as the living room. It was referred to as the parlor, and it was a multi-purpose room. It wasn't just the living room. It was also the room where dead bodies would be put, and the people would just, before they bury the body, they'd just be there with the body as part of their mourning. And you see that even in parts of Kenya where I'm from. Like, dude, you're just chilling with the body there, and it's just part of the grieving process, right? And I heard it said this way, that we grieve that which we love. So you grieve much because you loved much. And so when we see people suffering because of grief, because of loss, like most of the time, like you want to say the right word. You want to say the encouraging thing that'll have them stop maybe crying or stop mourning the loss of the person that they, or that it could be a pet. Sometimes it's, people grieve pets because they love their pets, especially in America, in the West, right? A lot of Africans still don't get it. Like, pets stay outside, right? They're only they guard the house. They don't stay in the house, right? But a lot of times we have a lot of discomfort because we're like, dude, what can I say? What can I do? What can I buy? What can I do to comfort this person? That comforting is good, but in many ways, I believe that to truly help someone grieve is not to try to eliminate the pain, but to allow them to know that that they can experience the pain and they'll still be okay.
And what do you think informs that view for you?
Ooh, what informs that view?
Yeah.
I think this idea that, again, like pain, we humans can grow, and a lot of good can come out of those experiences. Now, what informs that for me? I mean, a lot of it is like my worldview, which is like Judeo-Christian.
And how does that impact that?
My Judeo-Christian perspective?
Mm-hmm.
I go back to what I think Jesus said to his disciples, that in this world you'll have tribulation, but do not be discouraged. I have overcome, right? And it's this idea that just because you're overwhelmed doesn't mean you're overcome. Like, overwhelm is not a hindrance to accomplishing the purpose of life in this world. Pain.
Okay, say that again.
Pain and overwhelm does not hinder you from accomplishing the purpose and the design for your life in this world. And that's my belief.
So that underpins
Yeah.
how you approach this then to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, in many ways it can be used to propel you to your purpose. Even if the pain is like something that, again, like was uncalled for, or was like, somebody did something really bad to you that they shouldn't have done. Like that we agree. But it can still be, I believe it can still be, humans have this ability to make meaning of painful experiences that should not have been done to them. But they can, it's almost like that's the best form of vengeance, I feel like. Is like, instead of like paying back a hurtful thing that someone has done to you by hurting them in return, is by, and that this idea of like turning the other cheek is not necessarily like slap me here, slap me here. But it's this idea of like, I won't let your disease become my disease. I won't let the pain you're trying to inflict on me become the pain I inflict on someone else.
Rise and thrive.
Yeah, rise and thrive. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So, how about you, Dale? Why do you do what you do? Because you've been doing it way longer than I have.
Well, okay, fair. Though I've been doing it longer, I would argue that the formulations that brought you to the place that you're at now have been forming in you just as long as I've been doing this practice. And the underpinnings that have existed for you have existed for some time and have been molded, shaped. And for me, arguably, that's been the case as well.
Throughout the course of your life.
Throughout the course of my life. I've experienced what many would consider a good deal of pain in life and suffering. I've come to believe now that none of it was meaningless. Because it's the greater question, I would say, is what meaning can we ascribe to how we have come to thrive? That's the bigger question. It's meaningless if I put no meaning to it.
Yeah. And that the pain
didn't serve any purpose. Because I didn't allow it to. But that doesn't mean that there wouldn't have been a purpose to provide.
Right.
A guy I have to bring up right now. This guy, Viktor Frankl, but I love...
Oh, never heard of him. Never heard of him.
And he's never been brought up here before, but in case we haven't figured out, like... So...
He went through a lot of pain.
Oh, yeah.
In his
so,
life.
Quick blurb again, in case we didn't hear these other parts, but Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor, goes to the camps. His wife is killed, mother and father, brother. Wife was pregnant. So a great deal of pain in a short amount of time. Everything was put upside down. Everything that he had now been destroyed. Yeah. Why would a sane person continue to go on in that scenario? Wouldn't the merciful thing to do, wouldn't the merciful thing be to die?
Yeah, it put an end to all the pain.
Yeah. But here he says, it has a specific spot here, and this is in the Doctrine and the Soul, on the meaning of suffering. He said, we have said that a man's being consists of being conscious and being responsible. His responsibility is always responsibility for the actualization of values.
Did you say that again?
Absolutely. So he says that a man's being consists of being conscious and being responsible. His responsibility is always responsibility for the actualization of values. Not only eternal values, but also situational values. And I believe what he's talking about there is in the sense that, okay, there's those values like right now where someone may not understand. It's not like I am obviously doing the right thing here. It may not be visibly seen as far as why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
But given this situation, I know what I need to do because it supports this value in me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how I interpret that.
Yeah.
As you could read on in it, but
yeah. So that quote. So in terms of why you do what you do.
Yeah.
That's.
So I think that's a powerful underpinning, right?
Yeah.
Because essentially, I think that suffering in my life has provided an avenue for the actualization of values.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. What better opportunity
than through suffering?
Yeah.
So is there something about suffering that
as much as I hate to say it, as much as I hate to say it, and as needless perhaps as some things may have been interpreted in my own life. However, I think that there was a great deal of lessons that I could learn. And even more still, as long as I take the right opportunity to. But I think that opportunities rise innumerably when we start looking for them. Especially within the context of life lessons.
Yeah.
Because we don't always look for opportunities to be able to practice a value that is extremely difficult. Like patience, right? We talked about that one a while back. But it's like, I don't look for opportunities for me to practice patience.
No, it's like it's mainly thrust upon us.
It's thrust, yeah, because you don't want to wait longer. You don't want to. And like I think at some point we talked about, did we talk about cold plunging at all at some point?
Did we? I don't think we did.
Okay, for those of you that don't know, like I am a big fan of cold plunging, and just for the record,
by the way, you were doing it before.
Yeah, way before it became
was viral and trending. And Andrew
freak
Huberman,
fad. Yeah, way before
Andrew Huberman was like talking about cold plunging.
Yeah, way before that. Myself and a good mutual friend who's known as the Iceman.
Okay, right. Okay.
No,
so he got the Iceman. You didn't get that name put on you.
Oh no, he is the Iceman.
Yeah,
I'm not the Iceman.
Okay,
okay. Let it be known.
Let it be known.
He is the Iceman.
All right.
Yeah, I'm a mere shadow. But yeah, I know. So I think in that though, like talking about that is a perfect example of something that has high value and extreme high discomfort. You're subjugating yourself to suffering for a moment in time where the only real value is after you experience it. Right. At least with things like exercise or jujitsu, like while you're doing it, there can be some level of give and take. Like, oh, I'm enjoying this. Maybe right now this is hard. Yes. Or maybe at first it was all really difficult, but you get to a place to where, okay, yeah, there's some flow state here. Sitting in a tub of freezing cold water for 5 minutes is not enjoyable.
No, it's not. And I can attest to that. Dude.
And the
my
longer
Kenyan body was not made for this cold plunge.
It's a fantastic thing to watch though.
This is bad, dude. Yeah.
But no, I mean the longer you go without doing that too, the worse it is. True. I recently took a break like over the winter time and I had gone back to it and I was reminded how weak I had become. And I say that sardonically, but like,
how weak?
Yeah,
you weakling, Dale.
No, but and not to be pejorative, but just in the sense that like it takes a certain amount of fortitude to really be able to put your mind and your body in a place to where you know that this is what you're doing during this time. And you can also slow yourself down in spite of the agony that exists in the moment. But there's no better way to build that than by doing that. And then you become acquainted with how much you have not done that.
Yes.
because of the absence of it.
Right. It's a good wake up call.
Yeah.
It's like exercise too.
Oh,
Like today,
100%.
soccer.
Yeah,
Playing
totally.
soccer today, I was like, man, I need
Suffering.
to work out, man.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so this is interesting because I had a conversation recently with someone, and they were telling me like, David, do I really need therapy then if I can just find ways to become more resilient, for example? Because I think that's part of what we're talking about here is that, and there was a video that was trending recently of a therapist, a female therapist, who was kind of critiquing modern therapy and saying, and she's like, the goal of therapy is to help you become more resilient in the world instead of making you simply feel better. And it was like people were just like sharing, resharing because it touched a chord for a lot of people.
Yeah. Was that not known though?
No.
Like, and this is what's surprising
when you hear
to me.
it does. When you hear it, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Like that makes sense why we should have therapy. But in many ways, it's especially with the therapizing of Instagram. It's in many ways it's more so. I think that the tone of it is more so healing and feeling better.
Well, those are interesting.
Yeah.
The language there is really interesting, especially given the pejorative, like, because so often I think, and this is why I asked you about the underpinnings of things for you. I think the picture of therapy that's painted today is largely one of an attempt to be unbiased, third party, completely neutral, yet feed you my desire for your ability to see yourself in a certain light. And it's one that I think is good. I think you should celebrate yourself and your ideas and your views. Well, what if your ideas are crap?
Good question.
Excuse the frankness, but what if you have actually bad ideas?
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, it'd be untherapeutic of me, and for a session to say that, yeah, I don't know why you're doing what you're doing. This is a bad idea to some degree. However, at the same time, I think it begs the question: can therapists actually be truly neutral, or at some level, have they? And are they actually imposing their views and values
on people? Yeah.
And when I say imposing, I mean that more loosely, because I don't believe that outrightly. I believe that probably most therapists don't want to do that.
Yeah, like they're not trying to
they're not trying to indoctrinate anybody. I don't think that's true. Don't misunderstand that. However, I think that the reality is the garden you grow in, the soil you surround yourself with, impacts how you thrive. And particularly as this pertains to grief, so trying to bring this back, if I think of an example with, all right, how we inform ourselves with death and loss. If I have this cup here, and I'm supposed to let go of this cup and walk out of this room and leave this cup here and never speak of it again, never see it again, right? And this was one of the most meaningful things to me in this world.
Essentially letting go,
right? Moving on, right? That's a very tall order to make. Why would I do that? Right? Maybe this cup broke and I have all the pieces here, but it was the most valuable thing for me. Now, from a Judeo-Christian perspective, we could paint this in another light. I would say this is where, say, from an objective perspective, this is what could inform the meaning behind suffering here, rather the value that could be taken. And that is that now if I have this cup and I'm holding this cup, and I have you with me, and you're going to walk with me and follow me out of this room. And I'm holding it. And I give you the cup. Who's holding the cup?
I'm holding it.
You're holding it.
Mm-hmm.
So do I have to carry it?
No.
Is it with me?
Yeah, because I'm with you, and I'm holding the cup for you.
Sure.
So you can, it's in a way, it's still.
I can still see it there, right?
Yeah.
I could perhaps try to reach out and touch it. I can connect to that idea that this is still connected to me.
Yeah.
It's not something that I've forgotten.
Yeah.
Now, the challenge here obviously is if I'm holding the cup just like so, right, just barely with a finger here, and I attempt to give you the cup. Who's holding the cup?
We kind of both are, but not, you're holding it still.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm still holding it. And what happens if I just try to pinch it here?
Yeah, you're still holding it.
Can you really carry it for me?
It'll be harder.
Right. So in essence, what I have to learn to do is understand that letting go and giving are two very different things. Because I believe that there's high value in me giving you something. Because I believe that you're walking with me through this door. And you're holding it.
Yeah. Right.
Now, again, so high value perspective there. If I take that away, and now I say, okay, there's no underpinning here for me to say, well, I don't believe that you're walking with me at all. You're not here right now. I'm
letting go.
I'm letting go to now say, okay, I'm letting go. I'm leaving this room and never going to see this again. And that's it. Why would I do that? What would be the value in that? So I could be a stronger person? But what if I don't want to be strong without that?
That's a great question.
Without the idea of that, without being able to connect to that.
Yeah, it's a great point.
And so, again, in many ways, this is a metaphor. Metaphorically speaking, this allows me to experience pain, or rather the one I provided with you walking with me, allows me to experience pain, understanding that in such a way, there is still a difference between me having to bear the burden. But yeah, I can also pass this off, still connect. See that it's something that I can still connect to, that I know what that's like, but it will never be forgotten.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're saying that depending on what the client's underpinnings are and depending on what the therapist's underpinnings are, that'll definitely, for example,
invariably.
If you don't see eye to eye on that.
Yeah. So it's like,
then how do you,
I'd say, so for example, in grief, like that's
your goal.
Question.
Is that your goal?
So my goal would be that someone could have the most effective way to manage their grief as possible. And inherently, I believe that the most effective underpinning for that is a spiritual one.
Yeah.
Right. I believe in a God. Like I said earlier, I think I'm a Jesus follower. Right.
Yeah.
100% true. Now, I'm not trying to, my
convert
goal isn't
all your clients.
That's not the goal. Like, so I'm not going to lead with that. Right. But if you ask me, well, what's the most effective way to handle a grieving process? Right. How do we do this? Now, it's not as simple as saying, well, yeah, here, you just do this and you pretend to do this and then that's it. No, it's never that simple, nor should it be reduced to that. However, I believe that fundamentally, there's a number of perspectives that become much more value laden when I understand that there's a much greater piece at work and there's still value within the suffering that takes place. Right? Because the value of me being able to give something to someone is, I would say, very meaningful. That's a hard skill. And it's one thing to let something go. It's another thing to be able to say, no, I'm letting it go to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are very different. Those are very different phrases, very different perceptions, how that impacts you. Yeah.
And I would say that this has been understood for a long time. I'd say that that's even why in 12-step groups, it's like, okay, well, if you can't use the language God, then just use higher power.
Yeah.
Use HP.
Yeah, but we're not removing the concept of higher power.
Yeah, because the concept in and of itself, if you want to take the spirituality out of it, okay, so be it. You can do that. Doesn't make it any more meaningful. Or rather, doesn't make it any less meaningful, right? In the sense, and I think Frankl, obviously, like, I think he understood this well, right? I brought up this example, and because I think what in many cases today we try to do is we try to create our own values. Like we try to make values up. And I think Frankl believed in what he calls eternal values.
Like values that cannot be made up.
They can't be made up.
Yeah.
Right.
They're like gravity.
They were things that were created into you.
Yeah.
Right. Certain things that we understood that this isn't supposed to be this way. Right. And I think he understood that. But arguably he also understood that, okay, now, like, it's up to me to be responsible for taking ownership of saying, all right, I will now take every opportunity I can to extrapolate what has been given here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because ultimately, like, obviously, like we see clients who have different worldviews and underpinnings of how they view things, and I think with therapists we should let go of the idea of neutrality because it's not possible, but rather being mindful of the ways and the underpinnings that we bring to a session, the biases that we bring, and how they will show up in the therapy room I think is important. And I think if you're listening to this as a client, like, because I think that's a big question, is like, how do I know that my therapist is not going to support me in the ways that I support my own values and my belief system? Right. Yeah, because I think we've talked about it before. Sure. Like we've both seen therapists who are not necessarily agree with our worldviews, but we still find it beneficial.
Yeah.
So how do you make sense of that? Is it that
I would say that one place of this is, don't ask for apples from an orange tree.
Okay.
In the sense that, like, I don't know that it would be as helpful for someone who is atheistic to ask me to help them walk through grief, unless there's some part of them that is desiring this type of underpinning and is curious about it. That may be more troubling for them, unless there's a small part of them that actually is wondering about that. So I believe that just needs an honest conversation. And if you want me to try to approach now, so this is another question here, right? Like, if you're asking me to wear a hat, to say, hey, can you adopt this from my perspective and help me walk through this from my perspective? I can do that to a point. But my ability to put that hat on and wear that as if I own it will be impossible because I don't own it.
Yeah. Don't ask for apples from an orange tree. I love that. It's true. Yeah.
Like, and so I think there's a number of things, like, I think there's a number of things we can proverbially try on, right? Or rather, try on's the wrong word, but we can assimilate to, right? To say, hey, like, even like we've talked about this before, like, okay, like, ideally speaking, like in a relationship, yeah, you wouldn't have sex until you got married. That happens very rarely in today's society. Does that mean that I don't have the ability to sit with somebody and walk them through their marital issues or relationship issues? No. Okay, that one's out the door. All right. So be it.
Yeah.
What can we do now to be able to help increase the vitality and viability of the relationship? I believe that can totally be done. Because the goal, right? The goal of the two people is to improve the nature of their relationship now.
Yes.
Right. I think within grief, in that context, it's different because the goal, in many ways, like when we talked about, okay, like if we're talking about like an atheistic perspective versus a theistic perspective, in many ways, the goal of that person is to be able to figure out how to do this without this ingredient that I believe to be a key. Right. So it'd be this, I would say it would assimilate to the idea of saying somebody wants to grow their relationship, but be polyamorous. I would say I don't.
Have you dealt with that before?
Yes.
I'm still waiting. For that.
Yes. And so, and so what I communicate is I don't believe that this is the most effective way to do this. I have to.
Yeah. So you're bringing up another point here, Dale, is should therapists share their opinions or give advice? Because it sounds like that's what you did, right?
I did. I did.
Yeah. So so let's just stay with this. So you said, I don't believe this is the most effective way to do this.
Yeah.
So an alternative therapist answer, maybe one that would be more normative to what most non-directive Rogerian therapists would do. It'd be like,
okay, how can I help you achieve? Like they would just.
Well, like, what do you think? What do you think?
Oh no, they wouldn't even address it. I think they would have said, okay, yeah, no, like we can go ahead and work through whatever things may be most applicable for you guys at that certain time, and figure out how we can have peace, love, and harmony.
Right. Or like, or even just exploring like, what are your motivations behind a polyamorous? What got you interested in that?
I don't know that they'd go that far.
Yeah.
I think many modern therapists would say, okay, you have to do your truth.
Yeah.
Because this idea of truth now is put into question.
Right.
Well,
it's rather the postmodern approach.
It's a postmodern approach of therapy. Postmodern approach of therapy would suggest that truth is relative.
Yeah.
But the very idea of saying that truth is relative negates that there is any truth at all. That statement is a misnomer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Truth
the statement, truth is relative, is an absolute statement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense. So I think, to that point, you asked the question, how, like, it sounds like
therapists share their opinion or give advice? Because that's what you.
That's what I did. So should I have done what I did?
Yeah.
I'd say the answer, I believe I should have, because my goal, I believe in transparency, and I believe that's very important. I also believe that wherever possible, people should know who they're dealing with.
As a
therapist. And so if my goal truly is to not impact, or rather to allow my own views to not impact their decision-making model, I'm going to do my best effort to not be subversive with it in a way that I may not pick up on.
Which I think happens a lot. But people would like to they don't.
Yeah, they would like to believe that it doesn't. But the very nature, I would say, even your picture on Psychology Today says something about you.
So you would essentially, you'd argue that you're trying to be of service to the client by being honest about where you stand and where your approach is.
Yes.
And it's like, if we're going to continue like this is going to be hard for me to support you.
Yes. No, I believe that is the first service that I'm going to give them, in that, hey, they can avoid me and go find somebody else.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to waste their time or their money. And I don't want to waste mine, obviously. But I could just take the route of playing therapist for however many sessions it gets me, and go from there. And like, hey, it's not my job to it's like, okay, it's not your job, whatever.
Yeah. Not my job to tell them what to believe.
Yeah.
Or not my job to share my opinions or give advice.
Yeah.
I should just, and I think that's maybe. So again, like, I also have had issues with that idea, because we're taught don't give advice, and I think there's a lot of validity there, in the sense that sometimes advice is given at the wrong time, and it's given in such a way that Or okay, let me just steelman the don't give advice argument. So it's this idea that you want to empower the client to be able to make their own decisions, arrive at their own insight, so they're not depending on the therapist and not taking ownership, right? It's like, oh, I'm doing this because my therapist said so, not because I believe it's what I should do, right?
Which totally happens.
Yeah, which totally happens. And so it's like, no, you need to decide and take ownership for your decisions. Now you can agree with what the therapist advises you, but you need to. So I think that's a big idea. Is like we need to empower the client. By giving advice, you're disempowering the client. That you're now being the top down, right? Which is funnily enough, that's what doctors do. Healthcare, any other form of healthcare. That's what they do. They give advice. Like they give health advice based on their expertise. Like, I believe you should be eating this way. You should be losing weight. You should take this medication. You should. And it's like, so we just accept it wholesale. Sometimes in that case,
we pay them for it.
Yeah, we pay them for it, right? And some would even argue maybe we take the doctor's words too much without any form of critical thinking.
Yeah.
But on the flip side with therapy, it's like, no advice. Don't give any advice.
Well, and I think for the purpose of saying, okay, you want to empower the client or you want to empower the individual, I think that's a great goal. And I would argue that, okay, no, like this needs to be about what they want and what they desire. Like anytime, and this goes even beyond therapy, anytime you want to help someone, right? So I think that has weight there. Like they absolutely, not like the change has to come from them. They have to want it. Yeah. You can't force yourself on someone. But this is also presuming, I think, the same notion that the client has all the answers.
Yeah, which is another.
That's a prevailing idea.
You hear
a very
that
Rogerian prevailing idea that, okay, well, client has all the answers. They have it. Just give them time to simmer and then take their money until they figure it out. Right. But like, it's just not true. Otherwise, what purpose is there really in our training and what we learn? Why do we have the knowledge that we do? Just so we can learn to sit better with them and become more patient? Well, we didn't have to know all that stuff in the first place. You could just teach me how to have Zen for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
Just be more patient. Just understand that a lot of this stuff you don't understand.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to be a therapist. You don't be a coach.
Exactly. Just be a coach. It'd be way less complicated. You wouldn't be hyper fixating on all these symptoms of whatever diagnosis you think they might have or don't have and trying to figure out how to run it with insurance. It'd be way less complicated, which maybe that's the way some states are trying to go. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But I would argue that there's still a reason for knowledge. There's still value in being able to say, all right, like this is what I've seen.
Yeah, this is what the evidence suggests. This is what of 40 years, some people decided to study relationships for 40 years, and they came up with these principles of what makes relationships work. Would you like to know these principles?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course I want to know these principles. Oh, no. You what is it within you? What do you feel like you should be doing in this situation? You tell us. Forget the 40 years of research.
Yeah.
No, we don't do that.
Some people might.
Some people might, right. And actually, this is why I enjoy couples therapy, because I think inherently we're given more support and permission to be directive and to give feedback and 100%. Advice.
Yeah, 100%. It's true.
But
no, it's true, because by definition, again, and I think that's where we get off into the weeds again, is that in the current context, it's one that, again, the client has all the answers. But I would argue that, hey, then one of two things must be true. Either A, they don't have all the answers, or B, there's no purpose and actual reason for the knowledge that we do have, except to support ourselves, which doesn't even really do that, because then you're not actually even learning anything about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a very tricky place. Now, again, can we give advice too freely? Sure. Can we make mistakes about how that goes? Absolutely. But that's where I would say the value is in. Like, hey, if I'm a therapist who makes a lot of mistakes with, hey, I gave advice at the wrong time here and I didn't say enough there, and that, like, yeah, maybe I have some unhappy customers, and maybe from a cover my own tail perspective, that's not smart because maybe somebody's going to sue me. But it's like, at the end of the day, where did I learn more actually about what helped people? If my chief aim is to be really able to know what impacts people in a positive way and what really provides efficacy, if that is the goal at the end of the day, what's going to provide that quicker?
Try.
Like, yeah, you try it, you make mistakes.
Make mistakes and try.
Like, you have to be willing to do that. And so I think that that's a partial of it. I think people resist advice, or rather this
resist giving advice.
Yeah, resist giving advice just because they don't want to be taken wrong. They don't want to lose clients. They don't want to make people angry. They don't want to cause harm. Right? I think that's where it comes.
Yeah, they don't want to cause harm.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I don't want to cause harm.
Do no harm.
Yeah, do no harm.
But could you do no harm? But could you do harm by just like letting the client sit there and never getting feedback?
I believe that to a certain degree, there are some pieces that I say because I believe it would be harmful for me to be in the seat, having seen the things that I see, and not say something. Not at least say, hey, take this for what it's worth. But typically when people say the things you say and do or the things you're doing, this is typically what I see. Yeah. Take it or leave it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And there are two common complaints I hear about therapy is that therapy is a place where I talk, and the therapist never says anything in return. I'm just there to like dump all my complaints and my trauma.
And some people want that.
Some people want that, but some people hate that about therapy.
Yeah.
And there's just like, I've been in therapy for years. I just come and talk. Nothing really changes. Maybe I feel some catharsis by unloading, but I go back to my life and it's the same.
Yeah. Well, I'll be the first to say, like, I've had clients like that. That's what they want.
Yeah.
But I make it very clear, like, hey, is this what you want? And now if they were to ask me, do you think this will be the most effective for me? Well, no. But I'm also not going to say that unless they ask. That's the part where I think I have learned that it's not necessarily worth restating that, right? I can state that at the beginning, disclosures of things. Hey, so just so you're aware, I think this is how it can work very effectively. But if in their action, like what they begin to communicate, like that's meaningful for them is just to come and be able to say a lot of stuff, say things that are meaningful to them without any feedback at all. Okay, you can do that. If you ask me, do I think that's the most effective use of their time? I'm going to say no. I don't. Certainly not if we do this every session. Why would I say that?
Yeah.
Now, perhaps that may also depend on and be predicated on, well, what is it that we are trying to address here? A person-centered approach would say, well, what do you think? Was this the most effective use of your time? How do you feel with how it's been going? And I might ask that too. But then again, it's like, it is a dance, but admittedly, we all see where I fall.
Right. But I think it can be fresh air for a lot of people because they do want that. They don't want to just keep coming to dump and complain and just go home and continue wallowing in their problems. They want solutions of some sort. And I think that's the whole basis of why we have treatment plans. That's almost like it's the advice we're following based on the evidence to help someone achieve greater level of functioning in their life. And then, of course, they tell us like you have to be collaborative, make sure that the client is on board, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But it's still a treatment plan.
It's still a treatment plan. Yeah. It's still something that
alleviate the symptoms.
Exactly.
Right. And then, of course, the other complaint is that my therapist just like told me what to do and it completely did not resonate.
Yeah.
right?
Didn't work at all.
Didn't work. Yeah, didn't work at all, right? And granted, there are therapists who give like terrible advice, right? Like my wife, when we were dating, she was seeing a therapist, and the therapist she was sharing some of her insecurities with me, and the therapist told her, like, "Oh, you share your insecurities with your boyfriend? Oh no, you should not be doing that. Like this is not good. Like he's not gonna respect you if you show your insecurities." And she was like dealing with anxiety at the time, and this just like took her for a further spell. She called me. She called me right after the call. She didn't tell me she'd seen her therapist. So she was like, "Do you feel like, you know what? When I share my insecurities with you, do you not like it?" And I'm just like, "Where is this coming from?" And she's like, "My therapist told me." And I was like, "That is dude. I'm not even at that point. I was not even thinking to become a therapist." And I was like, "Who is this person? That is the worst therapist ever," right? And so in that case, I'm like, "Dude, yeah, this is some terrible advice."
Yeah.
So, but again, that's why we have training, is so that the advice we give and the when we give it, how we give it, it's all those things are important.
Yeah.
When we give it, how we give it.
Well, it's really about understanding, I think, ideally the power of words and the power of language, and how to best be able to construct that in a way that promotes change that's functional and meaning.
Yeah.
And also, obviously, the power of language, the power of action.
Yes.
The power of doing. Right. And the power of work.
What you're talking about is pretty deep, because when you're talking about the power of words, I feel like that's a lot of people, when they think of that, they think about church.
What makes you say that? What makes you say church?
So, well, you think about church, like you think about the preacher, right? Like the usually like the most pivotal moment in a church service is the sermon, is the preaching of the word.
Oh, he's talking to me.
Yeah, right. And it's like the preacher comes, and everyone has like their favorite speaker, and it's mainly because it's the way this person communicates the message and uses their language and uses words to help someone understand, to challenge someone, to encourage someone to take action in their life. And of course, in the spiritual sense, it's impactful, and they love that, and it's powerful for them. And in many ways, I heard there's this writer on Substack. Her name's Freya in India, and she has some wonderful stuff on there. But she said it. I've heard it said in many other places that therapists have become like the modern day priests.
It's true. Right? That's true.
And that therapy is the church of today. And that you go and of course you confess.
Yeah, confession.
You confess, you say what's on your heart, but you're also there to receive wisdom and enlightenment and receive it's the words, it's the exchange. And so in many ways, I think some people, especially who are new to therapy or haven't been to therapy and are more religious, have a bit of hesitation, because it's like, I don't want this thing to become more than it should be for me, because I have my faith, I have my religion, but I see so many people, they look to therapy as this like fix all, or it's like they put it in such a place where it's like, have you been to therapy? It's like, yo, you need to go to therapy. It's like, I only date a man who's been to therapy. I only date a woman who's been to therapy.
Yeah, because
therapy is going to provide the elixir of life.
It has this symbolism that somehow you were a better person for it.
Boom. That's it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, there's this notion that, okay, well, if you've done this thing, you should be better in some way, because we believe that we should be better or somehow improved.
Mm-hmm.
But even in that notion, we're making this objective statement about better or worse, how we would desire to live or not live.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of what happens is that we actually fail to be able to construct meaning and purpose. But I've preached on that a lot.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay. So again, like with the idea, what do you think of particularly of the idea of like of therapy becoming this sacred place?
I mean,
for people?
I think it's totally true. Yeah.
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 So I need to quote this because we're talking about therapy, but like,
this
is like, I think this is just a really quick notion because, okay, so Frankl here talks about like, he said the meaning of life, we have said, is not to be questioned, but to be responded to. For we are responsible to life. It follows from this that the response should be given not in words, but in acting by doing.
So, could you explain that? And
I think
like,
so.
How do you relate that?
So we talked. So I think I'm bringing that back to full circle to the notion of like we talked about the importance of language.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where therapy provides us utmost importance. But then it also, I think, ideally should bring the importance of action.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to support your notion, like a word like this and this language is actually, even though this is not the Bible, this is not like some spiritual text, it is very spiritual, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the sense that the whole idea of I would say, and this is rather, again, admittedly, this is a Christian idea, but the Christian ideal is to recognize that we are flawed and that we need improvement.
Right.
And we can only get so far based on our efforts, but that we have a responsibility to do so.
Yeah.
And some of that does not matter what we do insofar, but then some of it does.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure. Yeah.
There must be things still seen.
Fruit. Yeah.
Right. So,
and
that's
like
why I'm bringing that back full circle.
Yeah. And I love that because I think in many ways we, especially from us as a spiritual person, like we often compartmentalize, that if it's not in a church, if it's not a pastor, then somehow it has nothing to do with spirituality. I think everything is spiritual.
Rob Bell.
Yeah. Hey, you're gonna talk about Rob Bell now.
Yeah.
And that's probably another episode. But I think
metaphysics.
Yeah. So one has to be mindful that therapy is not this thing where it's like, oh, if you drink soda, the effects are likely going to be the same for everyone, right? Like we said earlier, it's the meaning you make. Going back to like the first thing we talked about with pain and suffering, it is the meaning you ascribe and how you approach it that makes a difference for you. And so there are people who go to therapy and this is church for them. This is all they have. This is for them. This is what they see and look to as their saving grace. Like if I'm not in therapy, then what do I have? There's people who approach therapy that way. There's other people who approach therapy as like, okay, I'm just gonna come learn the skills that I need to learn to be better at my relationship, right? Some people, it's about exploring their childhood trauma and their past, right? And so that all depends on you to determine what is therapy going to be like for you and how are you going to work with a therapist who can help you achieve that.
Well, and then I think, again, like what type of honest conversation do you want to have with your therapist to say it like, all right, what do you think I can gain from this? And what is the purpose that you ascribe to the situation that I'm at right now? Like, tell me honestly, because I would like to know.
There you have it.
There we have it. We went a lot of different places.
Yeah.
But I feel like we came back full circle.
Yeah, we came back.
Yeah. That's the purpose.
That's the purpose right there. Full circle. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a full circle.
Done.
All right.
On to the next one.